Welcome to What's in the Box episodes of horror with Donna and Eric. I'm Donna,
And I'm Eric.
and we're continuing our Texas AuthorCon author interviews. And tonight we have DW Hitz. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's great
Yeah,
to get you on here.
yeah, absolutely. We interact on Facebook, so this is really the first time we've actually talked face to face, I guess you could call it. So our first questions are just little fun questions. So tell me, Jason, Freddy, or Michael? Who's your favorite?
Oh, I think my favorite of those is Jason. And to me, it's part of that goes to the heart of not from the original movie, but from number two, where everything started to kind of blossom out into this whole mythos of its own, where he's just this unstoppable thing. And it's almost like he's a force of nature, in that if you get in his way, like any other force of nature, he's going to roll right over you. And part of it, I think, also that kind of intrigues me is the idea that he's been killed and brought back to life so many times, and the idea
Hmm.
that he's in some ways he's kind of a zombie at heart. He doesn't eat flesh, but he's kind of a super zombie if you think about it. And that whole idea, I think, is rather chilling. Um, but yeah, I think Jason all the way, because he'll keep taking the punishment and he'll just keep coming after you, and you can't stop him.
Nice.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's he's my favorite. So, and I say it, I think almost every time we talk to people, I just think it's the best collection of movies, beginning to end. So even the hokey ones are still fun.
Yeah, there's
And
some stinkers in there, but they're still fun. Like
yeah,
one
but
of my
they're
favorites,
still fun. Yeah, like
like
and
one of my
but
favorites is Jason X. Jason
mhm.
Goes to Space, as
Yeah,
I
I mean
like
it's
to
a
call
fun idea, and you really can't. I mean, it's so over the top, and it should be silly,
it.
but it still works so well. And you can't say that for the other two. So
Mm.
they have movies that are, I mean, just really terrible. Which is funny because I didn't really think that with Nightmare on Elm Street. I mean, I love one and three. I consider those two near perfect movies
Mm-hmm.
for what they are. And four and five are fine. They have moments, but I watched six recently, and I mean, it is terrible. I mean, just absolutely terrible. And I thought, oh, yeah, I remember seeing this in theater and thinking it was okay, but it doesn't hold up at all. And I don't ever think that with Jason movies. I think, oh, I can definitely see it hold up. So,
Yeah, I mean the Nightmare movies. One of the things that always bothered me was is immediately in number two they started to break their own mythos. I mean, he goes from they break their own rules. You know, you have rules. You
mhm.
can't do anything in the daytime or when you're not sleeping. Then all of a sudden he can. He can't interact in the real world. Then all of a sudden he can. Like I forget the scene. Like he breaks through a glass mirror, like falls in a pool, and but nobody sees as he's invisible, but he's like running around doing all this stuff, and um, that kind of bugs me when
Yeah,
movies start to break their own rules.
I don't know if you guys can hear the dogs going crazy. Hopefully, they're going outside. But um, yeah, the thing I see, yeah, and I think they recognized it immediately. I think when they finished two and they put it out, I think they realized that it took it too far outside of what they were hoping for, because three reins it all back in and reestablishes the rules and gets everything smooth again, and then you don't have them really step outside after that point. It's just the movies aren't as good. They
Yeah,
become more MTV flashy. They become less story and more about the one-liners. And so
mm,
I don't know. That's why I never think of Freddy as I mean, I love Freddy, but I just don't think of it as a whole, as a collection. I just don't think it's better than Friday the 13th.
I think Freddy is a fantastic concept
Hmm.
that is just perfect in so many ways if he was done right, but he hasn't been done right as often as he should have been.
Yeah. And my argument would be one and three, he's done right. And then the was it called New Nightmare? Is that the one where he comes back and Nancy's
Mm-hmm.
back in it? Or
Was
Heather
it
is
the
in it as herself. I think that
Yeah.
one's
Yeah,
a
yeah, no,
decent
it
movie.
has Wes Craven in it as one of the
Yeah,
characters.
yeah.
Yeah, that and they kind of changed the mythology there too, if I remember correctly. And so that
Yeah,
it
I think they
actually gets
did.
his strength from being one of these old creatures that's brought
Mhm.
about by belief in him and stuff. And I actually thought that was a pretty cool twist in order to try and reinvigorate the franchise.
I think that's probably because Wes Craven said the only way we're doing this is if I can come in here and put my stamp back on it and make it interesting for me again. Because he really lost interest after one. And I know he's spoken well about three, but the rest of them I don't think he cares for. So
It's one of those things, I guess, when once the corporation owns your IP, they can
Mhm.
kind of do what they want with it.
yeah,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah. So how about werewolves or vampires?
Oh, I'd go with vampires.
Okay.
Although there's so many kinds of vampires out there. I have specific ones that I like. I like pure evil vampires.
Yeah.
I don't like vampires that have a soul or have, like good in them or are romantic. I like the 50 Days of Night or 30 Days of Night vampires.
Those are very popular in this in this series that we've
Mm-hmm.
done.
Yeah.
Those get brought up a lot. If the vampire is mentioned, it's always that vampire as the one
I,
that's one of their
I mean,
favorites. So.
even the Lost Boys. I mean,
Mhm.
they're so much. They want certain things. They have human characteristics, but at their heart, they're evil.
Yeah.
You're not going to convince them to be good. And I say that too, also because I've written a vampire series myself. I have a 3-book trilogy that's based on vampire hunting, and the hunter is basically trying to avenge his family, and dives into this whole thing that gets out of his initial wheelhouse, out of what he expects, and then just kind of blows up into this whole scenario that he's got to come around and solve. And in order to do that, I kind of had to do a lot of work on the vampire mythos
Mhm.
and reworked a lot of things to bring them back into being something that's completely evil. That's basically a beast with human skin, and had a lot of fun doing that. But um, I haven't done the same thing with the werewolves just yet. Um, there's actually a couple of werewolves in that story, but we don't really focus on them. You just see them kind of here and there, and um, they're still fun though, but not my favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. But it's
Mhm.
funny, the vampires you're describing kind of feel like werewolves when they're off their leash, and it's the beast does
Mm-hmm.
what he wants to do, monster, that kind of thing. And I think that's in all those stories, those are the best ones. When you have that when you let them off the leash and you let them just kind of be what they are, and you don't
Right.
try and put them in a box, a human box. You let them be whatever creature they are, and that's when they usually shine. And those are the movies we always keep going back to and enjoying. So, and books too, I guess. So,
Yeah.
I'm not a
Mm-hmm.
huge vampire person, so I don't really read a ton. Unfortunately, most of the stuff I have read is probably fall under the cutesy stuff. I've read most of the True Bloods, and we're gonna do Dracula soon. So I mean will hopefully open the door for some stuff. But we've been reading a lot of werewolf stuff lately. So
Mm. So do you have a favorite scary movie from your childhood?
Um, the first scary movie I've ever seen, and I've seen people mention this on your show before, so it must be a thing with my generation, is the Return of the Living Dead. I saw that as a kid and didn't sleep for weeks and wanted to watch it again and again. Um, and it kind of cemented, I think, in my brain the fear and the love for zombies. I think there's something about um, something being dead but still being in motion that is just kind of primal in the way that it revolts you and kind of strikes a fear inside you.
yeah, it's
Um,
terrifying because it doesn't stop. It's going to continually. Death couldn't stop it. It's still coming, and then you
Yep.
have to deal with that. And so yeah,
mhm.
I totally get that. It's such a funny move too. I mean, there's just they mixed humor so perfectly in it, and it's just the perfect everything. The right level of gore, right level of humor, good
Mhm.
story. So yeah, it's one of my favorite vampire or zombie movies. So
Yeah, it's just from beginning to end, tons of fun.
mhm.
And then I want to say after that was probably Poltergeist.
Oh
Um,
yeah, that's a good one.
I
Yeah.
mean, you could not put a clown doll anywhere near me for too long.
You know what freaked me out about that movie the most was the chicken scene. When he goes to the fridge and pulls the piece of chicken out and he starts eating it and then he looks down and it's got the maggots and stuff in it.
Yeah.
I remember
Oh, yeah.
seeing that as a kid and thinking, that I always was double checking chicken after that for a long time. But
Oh, it's
that's
got so
that
many.
yeah.
In like the bathroom scene with the guy.
With these, yeah, with his face.
I mean,
But
you watch that today and you're like, how could anybody have, even thought that looked real? You watch it today, but I mean, back then, back in the 80s, man, that was like, is like vomit inducing. Is
Mhm.
so nutty.
yeah, I was telling somebody on one of the other interviews that we did, the thing that scared me the most about that movie was actually Tangina.
Mhm. Yeah.
I don't know why, but she was, and she wasn't even like a bad character or the scary person of the movie, but she just freaked me out. I don't know why. I think it's because it kind of like she's there to help, but then she kind of seems like she's not helping. Does that make
Mhm.
sense? Do you
Yeah.
guys understand what I'm talking about? She
And I
kind of
think
like,
yeah.
yeah,
I was gonna say part of the reason that it freaked you out is because you didn't see little people like that, and she had that weird
mm,
voice, and she came across as they set her up to be kind of witchy and
yeah,
spooky, but she's in this package that you didn't normally see, especially as a kid, and back then, and we have so it's kind of scary when she comes in there and she's
yeah,
talking about all the dead and all that stuff, and so yeah, no, I totally get why that would freak somebody out in the 80s.
yeah.
But you never know though when you're younger though what exactly is gonna hit you and
Hmm.
freak you out. Like I remember when I saw E.T. in the theater, when he first popped up out of the cornfields, like I screamed just as loud as Elliot.
Right, because and that's the other thing that I don't think people today, or for the young folk out there, I don't think they quite understand how the internet has desensitized them, and cable has
Mhm.
desensitized them to a lot of things that would freak us out in the late 70s, early 80s, because we just didn't see anything. You had no concept and no context for anything because we weren't able to just download whatever it is.
Or
We're not,
Google, or
yeah, or
yeah,
share. There's everybody, all of our friends aren't sharing the same video about whatever subject that is going to either gross you out or amaze you or whatever. You had to go hunt this stuff down, and it was,
It
you
was
know,
work.
yeah, it was. I mean, you earned every inch of whatever it is you were trying to figure out, and so. But yeah, but nowadays you just like, oh well, you can see how fake that was, or you can, this isn't. I don't understand why you would think this was scary or whatever, but yeah, no, I totally get that. And I try and put myself in that frame of mind when I start watching movies from like the 50s, or, you're thinking, because, you read about it, how that people are feigning, or like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, they're like people throwing up and feigning and running out of the theater and
Or
stuff.
The
And
Exorcist, people were completely freaking out about, and there's
hmm
yeah.
nothing really that graphic in it, but it's intense for what it was, and especially for the
Hmm.
time when it came out.
Yeah. And then you're like, well, I don't get it now. But then you could easily see why that
yeah,
would freak somebody out. You just had to. I don't know. Like I said, it just everybody seems so like, oh, let's keep pushing, keep pushing, keep pushing. Well, we get to a point where we just everything's been pushed so far that we don't even react anymore to stuff. And sometimes I feel bad for the generation that doesn't have that little sense of wonder because they
Mhm.
have everything at their fingertips.
Well, I remember we rented Faces of Death at
Hmm.
a
mm,
birthday party I had when I was a kid. And you think about that now, it's probably got nothing on Art the Clown.
yeah,
Right. Right.
You know,
Yeah, and,
like,
and that was a big deal. You'd have to go to the video store. You had to find one that actually carried it, and usually it was
mhm.
somewhere weird. And then you'd have to have somebody who was old enough to rent it. And it's
hmm
like, and then today, what is it? Oh, I just clicked like 5 buttons, and now I have it. I own it, streaming it. We can watch it whenever you want to, or it's on Tubi. Everything's on
yeah,
Tubi. It feels like so. It's
yeah,
like, yeah, yeah. And I think that's the cool, and that's what's fun. You said that movie comes up a lot in these interviews for our generation, the zombie stuff, and it's like because we all were hunting those movies out. It
Mhm.
wasn't just there for us. We had to, and it kind of shows the love we all have for the genre. You can
Mhm.
in these interviews we've noticed everybody kind of has this, like, even the ones that don't write horror, if they're fans of horror, we all have the same story of trying to find it, somebody introducing us to it, and then whispers of legends of things that we had to go find to do and stuff. So I don't
yeah,
know, I just that's what I love about the genre so much, and the community. is how, we can all come together over some of these same movies and books and ideas,
No, it is fantastic. No, I was mentioning to somebody a little while back how there was a while when I was just, when I first started writing books, first started getting out there and trying to connect with other writers, where I was on Twitter a lot more than I was on Facebook. And it was funny because I couldn't really find a horror community there. I mean, it's there, I'm sure, but it's like I never really could run into it. But when I switched over to Facebook to try and start networking on Facebook and finding other horror writers and stuff, it was like I was kind of welcomed into this family, and it was so gracious. It was really cool, and I'm really amazed at all the awesome people that I've met um, just in the past couple of years,
Mhm.
making friends in the different horror groups on Facebook.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm such an old man. It never occurred to me to look for stuff. Like I just recently jumped on Twitter, I mean like a month ago or something. So I have like nothing. And you're right, I can't find anybody on there. And it never once occurred to me that there was groups of people on Facebook talking about the things that I love to watch and read and stuff. It didn't even occur to me when I wrote my first book. It took me 6 months, maybe. I think I had finished my second book before I even realized that, oh, there's actually groups of people discussing, and I could share this with them instead of just not having I had no idea what I was doing, so I thought, and it's a really cool thing about it, and even if you have a weird subgenre that you just love, there's a group there for you. So that's a
Hmm.
cool thing too. But I love the fact that you can go to Books of Horror and you can find, everybody loves just horror, Yeah, they're open to letting anybody get on there and talk about their weird subgenre that they love. And
Hmm.
and for the most part, everybody's understanding, accepting, and will engage with those things, and it's fun. So
No, and you're right. That's awesome. I see people on there who want to read extreme. You see people on there who want nothing but ghost stories. You see people on there who want just pick a genre,
mhm.
and there's people out there that can give you 100 recommendations, and I think that's fantastic.
Yep. Now, would you say you have a different favorite horror movie as an adult?
Hmm. Honestly, it's hard for me to pick a movie as an adult. There's so many things I like for different reasons. Like Cabin in the Woods, I love because it's kind of twisted and mixes genres and throws so much stuff at the wall because I
Mhm.
love different genres. I can't get pinned down to one genre, one type of horror, one type of anything. But then there's stuff like like Dreamcatcher, that is disgusting and just thrilling. You have the stuff like I was saying, like the Art the Clown, which is just you want to turn away but you can't turn away.
Hmm.
So I don't know. I can't really say a movie that's my favorite as an adult. There's just too much out there. It's
Yeah,
like
it
trying
is.
to pick a favorite book. I can't
Yeah,
do that.
I
Oh,
can't
well, then
really
you're gonna
do.
love the next question.
Yeah. So if someone were to come to you and say, "Hey, I want to get into reading horror," what would you recommend to them to read?
There are a couple things that I might pick out for them. One might be something like Firestarter. It's fun. It's very character based to kind of pull you into the story, but it's not super gory or anything like that. There's stuff like uh, I had a couple things I was thinking about earlier today. Um, hmm, I mean,
Firestarter is a good one. We haven't
Mm,
heard that one yet. I think that's a great suggestion because you're right. It isn't too much of anything, but it's still in that wheelhouse of the sweet spot for King.
mm,
Some of his earlier stuff, they always stand out as more. I know some people like the later stuff, but I'm I think, yeah, if you can get your hands on some of the earlier Stephen King stuff, and Firestarter would be a good place to start.
yeah, because it seems like so much of that older stuff was more based around the idea of writing something that's more of a creepy um, uh, literature,
Mhm.
instead of something that's full blown horror the way we have today. It's kind of like, I'm going to write you a story that's literary fiction and kind of pull you in, and it's going to get creepier and creepier. And once we get to the end, then I'm going to hit you with this, with what's the climax of the story, and then you're going to be scared, you know.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, like even The Exorcist, which drove people nuts back in the days, is very tame compared
Mhm.
to so much of the stuff today. Even in traditional or mainstream horror, it's very tame to me anyway. I mean, that's kind of my perspective.
Yeah, if
Um,
I was going to suggest a book by Blatty, I would suggest Legion. And then you almost kind of say, well, you might want to at least watch Exorcist, but then here's the book to read. I thought Legion was brilliant. So that was always the one I loved as a kid growing up. You know, as a teenager, that was the one I always went back to. Um,
Another one I might recommend might be Phantoms. Um,
mhm.
it's it's got some action, some sci-fi, and some horror mixed in. It's got a good pace, and it'll help somebody kind of move along. Whereas so much of, like I was saying, like so much of the older horror might be harder for people to keep their attention
Mhm.
today, because people today want something to happen and they want it to keep happening and keep happening, you know, like as if they're watching a movie. I think a lot of people don't have the patience for older literature. I mean, even something like a Ghost Story by Peter Straub. I mean, that's a lot of fun. It's a great book, but man, it takes forever for things to really jump up and start happening. And if you're the type of person who can't sit around for a story, it's not going to be a good book for you.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I'd probably try and ask them like what type of stuff they're interested in, and you know, try and pick something maybe along the lines of one of those that you know, saying that has some pace to it,
Mhm.
closer to what a modern reader might be looking for, but also isn't too intense or crazy. I'm not going to recommend Womb to anybody.
We had someone say
Yeah. Right.
Roland Bercy was like, "Oh, I'd give him some Wrath James White."
You know, we've had some laymen and a couple other, but usually it's King or, you know, something classic. So,
Yeah.
Oh, Layman has some good ones. That would be a good
mm,
suggestion. I can agree with
yeah.
that, because I mean that's like definitely has a good pacing to it, and you know has a still has some great horror elements, but it's not wall to wall nuts.
Yeah, I'm a huge Layman fan. I'm a big guy. Yeah, I mean, he's the guy that brought me to extreme horror. So without him, I never probably would have written any of the things I've done. So I always fall back to him as my guy. So yeah, I would love everybody to read Layman and enjoy it. But those are my favorite argue or discussions on books of horror and stuff is when somebody comes on to crap on Layman. I go find Tara and say, hey, did you see this? Did you see this guy talking bad about Layman? Tara and I go back and start, you know, picking at him,
Yeah, I've
poking
seen
him
a
and
couple
stuff.
of those here and there. People
Yeah.
saying like, you know, why do people hold Lehman in such high regard? Why do they hold Herbert in such high regard? And it's just kind of like, I'm not at the position where I'm going to jump in any of those arguments. I don't consider myself a scholar in any way. I still have a lot to read and a lot to learn as far as literary horror. Um, but I know stuff that I've liked, and I know stuff that
Hmm.
you know I might recommend or come back to. But yeah, but there's conversations are always fun to read.
Yeah, they
Hmm.
are fun to read. They are
Yep.
definitely fun, especially if you're not invested, you know, like you could go either way. Then it's like, oh, this is crazy. Where are we going with this? You know, and making mental notes of who went which way so that you know later if you need backup in any argument, you can call on them, right?
Yeah.
So,
Well, I mean, and I always think it's horrible to trash books or trash
mhm,
authors. No
yeah,
matter what it is you like, that doesn't mean that there's not something that someone else can like. You know,
one
just
hundred
just because you
percent.
don't like this author doesn't mean he can't have a following. And because people like all kinds of stuff, and you should feel free to like whatever you want to like.
Yep.
Hmm.
I always think if even if I don't like something, I'm like, well, what do I know?
Yeah.
You know, this is probably something that's amazing, and I'm just an idiot and I don't get it, and that's on me. And I don't
Yeah.
need to go and get in somebody's face because they do like it. So I could care less. Yeah, I'm totally with you. People
Yep.
want to, but I don't mind it if they want to get on there and have fun. And you can tell when somebody's doing it and kind of having fun with it, and you can do it when you can see when somebody's being a jerk about it. So as long as we don't get too bad, I enjoy a good kerfuffle. But
Kerfuffle. Now you said that it would be hard to pick a favorite horror book. Um, do you have a couple of favorites? Some that you
Sure.
maybe read multiple times or
Yeah.
not?
Between it and The Shining, I probably read those repeatedly too many times. There, I mean, it is kind of like a what do you call it? A comfort blanket, you know.
Hmm.
It's like I read something, maybe it's I didn't enjoy, and I'm like, well, let me just read something that I enjoy for a little while, you know, and I
which
might
is
pick it up halfway
crazy.
through and just read a little bit of it and just
I was just gonna say it's crazy because it's like 1,000 pages plus, and you're like, oh, let me just dive into this 1,000 page thing that I like. And I'm with you because I love Robert Jordan, and when I need, a little comfort, I may sit down and read like the series, and then so I get it. It doesn't matter the length if it's something that you love, but
mm.
yeah,
Well, it's
it's great.
funny too because when you're reading something that you're in sync with, it's like
Hmm.
the pages just fly by.
Hmm.
When you're reading something you're not in sync with, it can be kind of like work to get through it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're reading something you're in sync with, and it's just instead of it being work, it's pleasurable, and it's just you fly
Yeah.
through.
And and I've said it before on this, and I'll say it till the day I die. There are portions of it that I think are incredible, and there are portions of it I hate. And
Mm.
so it's one of those books that I love, hate, and I've read, but I have read multiple times. So it's not like I've not given it a shot or whatever. But I think everything that King does brilliantly with the children, I just don't like the approach he took with the adults. And I don't know if it's because of the movies that have kind of warped me a little bit or what, but yeah, no, I could sit down and read if I could have it split perfectly and it's all just the kids stuff. I think I'd probably read that all the time.
Hmm.
But
Well, I
yeah.
mean, the first movie did a lot better than the second one.
Oh yeah. Oh man. I cannot tell you how much I hate the second Hit movie. I mean, I
Mm.
despise that movie. But I did love the first one. I thought, man, they really got it. They got it. This is gonna be just as good as the TV show, but better because it's R. We're gonna get all the
Mm.
stuff we couldn't get. And I thought the casting was really good. Man, the casting was so good on the remake. And so but you visit the TV show, the miniseries,
Hmm.
and there's a documentary, I think it's on Prime right now, that talks about the making of it and all the stuff they
Yeah,
went through
I've
it, and it
seen
just
that.
came out recently. And it's so fun to see. Oh yeah, that the casting there was perfect too. And then
Yeah.
to see the behind the scenes stuff. So it kind of every time I kind of get down on it a little bit, I'll see like the documentary or maybe catch a little bit of the movie, and then I'm all excited again. So yeah, it's one of those. Pennywise is such a brilliant character. So I mean, he really kind of puts a band-aid on some of the stuff that I didn't like, but
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some stuff in there that you kind of wonder, okay, was he just on a whim this day when he
mhm.
wanted to include this part right here? But I think that happens to pantsers sometime. I'm a pantser myself.
Yeah.
I don't make outlines. I don't decide what I'm going to do ahead of time. I just do what feels natural when I'm in the moment, start writing. And sometimes you can go off on little tangents and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, and you figure it out later. But I mean, I don't know.
It makes the editing part of the whole thing a little more tedious because you're like, what was I thinking? Why did I write? Why is there 5,000 words about fudge on this thing? And it has nothing to do with anything else. I don't know what's going on. Now I gotta get rid of that and rewrite this. And I'm like, what was I doing? And then I look over and I see my outline, and I was like, oh, I didn't even pay attention to a word I wrote before I started. And I'm like, I'm terrible as a pantser, but that's exactly it. That's how I like to do it too. So you kind of just let the characters take you where they want to go. So
Yeah, and then you think, well, what can I do right now that's really bad?
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. Yeah. How can I stick the fork into the electric socket in this, specific scene so that everybody's shocked, when it's done and stuff. So yeah, no, I'm with you there. And that's the fun part too about being a pantser and not having it's fun to not to be as surprised as the reader's gonna be,
Mhm.
as you're going through it. So that makes it an interesting thing. But then like I said, it does make editing somewhat boring sometimes.
Yeah. I'm doing a collaboration right now, and the person I'm writing with is a rigid outliner, and they have to outline everything, have like a whole sheet of like the characters, and I'm like, you do your thing, and then give it to me, and then I'll pick it up.
Yeah. Sometimes those are just magic. So it'll be
Yeah.
exciting to see what y'all come up with.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the things that you can fit in when you're outlining and you're planning so much ahead. I mean, you can do some really cool twists and turns and stuff that you might never see coming if you're just trying to pant something like that. But
Mhm.
at the same time, that my first book, maybe I'll try it again one day, but my first book I outlined, and man, I felt like I was doing homework. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, today's assignment is this scene. And in this scene, the outline says this is supposed to happen, and then this is supposed to happen. And to me, it took all the creativity out of it, because I kind of felt like I did all the creativity when I did the outline. And now I'm just doing the work to fill in the gaps. So it doesn't work for me, but I applaud people that can make it work.
Yeah, it's amazing. I've seen people like, oh, I outlined it and wrote it in like 3 days, and I've written stuff quickly, pantsing it. You just get in that groove and you're just writing. But man, when you have people that are consistently outlining and putting out stuff because of the outline,
Mhm.
I do get a little jealous of that. I'm like, oh wow, look at this, look at this guy, look at this
I have a
person doing
friend who
this.
writes romance, and she outlines everything to a T,
Hmm.
and she can write 10,000 words a day. And
You know, and I've noticed that it's people outside our genre that seem to really embrace the outline because I've run into a lot of people outside of horror that does that, and they're like, it's like, whoa, it's
yeah.
magic. What is this? What sorcery is this? So,
It's magic. Uh, so for the people who may not know your books, just give us a little bit on what genre of horror or subgenre of horror do you like to write? Um,
So I kind of have stuff that's a little bit all over the place. Um, I have one series that's a vampire hunter series. It's a trilogy. And if I was going to classify that, I would kind of call it a gory supernatural thriller, because it's very fast paced, and it's, get them, cut them up, oh shit, they're after us, and now they're dismembering people. And, it's like,
mhm,
um, and that one's a lot of fun. I have one that's more sci-fi. It's kind of a dystopian future sci-fi thing. But then as well, it's got tons of gore. It's kind of, if you think about an alternate, what would you call it? So like an alternate reality version of something like The Boys, where you have all these people with you have aliens and all these people with superpowers around the world, but it's a dystopian, and they literally tear people apart. Um, then I have most recent book is my most recent novel is Bloodtooth. It's a more traditional style small town horror, and it's I want to say around 180,000 words. It's a big brick, um, but it it's more, it's not extreme, but it dips a lot closer to extreme than some of my other stuff. And then I have an extreme novella that I put out earlier this year, Larval Seeds, which
mhm.
is
Beautiful cover.
kind of like if your mom brought home a succubus or an incubus, I guess is the male version of it, but the incubus started laying eggs inside you, and all kinds of horrible things happen. Um, and what I'm working on right now is another extreme book as well. So which I hope to have on hand for the convention.
Oh, cool. That's awesome. It's always
yeah.
fun. I know I did that for scares. I wanted to have something. So I got there's something in the water, but I mean it was like I was sweating bullets trying to get it done and printed and to the house before I left. So but that's always fun to have that little bit of a deadline. Like you said, I know it feels like homework, but gives you a little extra oomph to get you going. So that'd be really cool.
Yeah, I like to dip my fingers in a lot of different
Hmm.
genres. It's like I don't want to not write something because it's not in the genre I tell myself I write in. So if I have an idea for a story, I'm going to write it. And it doesn't matter if it's, the type of genre I usually write in or something that I don't. And then I just think, well, I'm going to explore this and see where it goes.
Yeah, I think that's
Um,
refreshing, and I think that's the way to do it. You really just, yeah, I mean, you're a writer. That's and so shouldn't be limited by a genre or anything like that. So,
Yeah,
and
don't
that's what I love
box
about
yourself
horror.
in.
Yeah, that's what I love about horror is that we can write anything, and then you can just add your horrific elements, and then you're like, well, I wrote a western or a romance or
mhm.
space, opera. Then it's still the horror or whatever you want to do. you know, and so because I find horror in everything, so it doesn't really matter to me, whatever the setting is or the characters, you know, as long as they're well written and it's interesting and we, you know, it'll get there when it gets there.
Mhm. Definitely.
Absolutely. So you've already told us about your newest project, your newest release. When you're writing, do you listen to music?
I do. I always find something. Well, let me rephrase this. I find something where I don't hear the words.
Mm.
So sometimes I might listen to techno if there's something rough and tumble going on. Sometimes I might listen to hard rock, and I say it where I don't hear the words. So it might be something where I've heard it so many times that I don't really hear it. It's just kind of like in there.
Mm,
Um, Sometimes I'll listen to when I edit. Sometimes I'll listen to classical because it just kind of sits there in the background. But I find when I listen to something where there's words in it that I want to hear, then I kind of distracts me from what I'm working on. Um, so there's always something playing, but it's always something where it doesn't necessarily have any vocals, or the vocals are something I've heard so many times, or it's death metal where you can't understand the vocals, or
Yeah, that's always helpful. You get the vibe, you get the energy, but you don't have to, you can't hear anything. Even if you
yeah,
knew what it was
exactly.
saying, you wouldn't know what was going on. So
yeah.
I'm with you on that. That's cool. I found a today on YouTube, I found a guy that had like 3 hours of music that was based off of Carpenter. So it's in the style of John Carpenter, but it's all that synthetic synthesizer 80s kind of sound like you would get in his early movies, you know, when he does the soundtracks. And I
Hmm.
thought that it was perfect. No words, but it had the right vibe and YouTube's really cool about that now. I mean, if you have an idea of something, you type it in, usually somebody's already put a playlist or hours of some sort of, you know, instrumental thing put together for you. So
Now you
That
said
sounds cool.
you said Carpenters, so I immediately thought there's a soundtrack for woodworking. And then I started thinking about the Carpenters from the
yeah, I was gonna say that's
70s.
what I thought you were about to say. Yeah, yeah, I was listening to the Carpenters all day. I was writing about.
And I'm like, oh, I like the Carpenters,
Yeah, well, sometimes you need to listen to Carpenters.
Yeah. And then I realized who you were actually talking about. And I was like, okay, that makes way more sense.
No, but he's done some great soundtracks, like The
Yeah.
Thing. I mean, even Ghosts of Mars has some pretty cool
Mhm.
tracks in it.
Yeah, every time, everything that he's done, I've enjoyed. Usually because it's so outside the box. You know, it didn't at the time it wasn't traditional. I mean, now it has its own sound. So if you hear somebody mimicking it in a different movie or something, you can almost say, oh, well, you can see where they got the inspiration. But when you caught those movies initially, sometimes, you know, they stand out because they're so unique. And then it ties you in with the visuals and stuff. So yeah, I'm with you. I think his stuff is really fun.
And now so many people want the retro sound for some of their movies, so they go back to some of that stuff.
Yeah. And that's funny how we've come full circle to the stuff that was being mocked when it came out. Now everybody's trying to do. So
Mm. Now, besides coming to Texas AuthorCon, where can people find your books?
I have my own. I have an Etsy store where I sell signed copies, and you can find that from my Facebook page, and then of course on Amazon. Um, and Yeah, I think this I go through Ingram for a lot of the publishing too, so
mhm.
which means that things will show up on a Barnes and Noble website. A couple of the stores I think have a couple of my books, but not many of them. But yeah, if you want a signed copy, the easiest thing to do is take a look at my Facebook profile, and I have a link on my Facebook profile. If you just want something from Amazon, it's an easy way to find it too. My website is dwhitz.com, and it has a link to the Etsy store as well as to all the books on Amazon.
Okay, cool. And we'll put all those links down below so people can just click, go find your
Awesome,
stuff and
thank you.
start ordering.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. People can come out and see you at Texas AuthorCon, July 14th and 15th in Dallas area. It is a free event, but if you want to be eligible for the door prizes, you do need to sign up for an Eventbrite ticket. We'll have a link to that in the description as well.
Mhm.
So it's been great talking to you, and we'll see you in a few months, a
Thank you
month
so
and a
much for
half.
having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.